Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave with Core Productions here to talk about Extended Family, Season 1, Episode 3, titled The Consequences of Gaming. The episode's description reads as follows. Julia's concern over Jimmy's obsession with violent video games leads to a surprising disciplinary measures. Okay, that's not at all what happened in this episode.
Not really.
It's sort of there, but not exactly an accurate description.
If anything, I could say they were disciplinary measures for the parents.
Yes, that's certainly true. The episode was written by A.J. Segal and directed by James Widows. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go check it out. Then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. All right, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
All right, so we got the third installment of the series here. I thought this was a fun episode, and I know you mentioned this before, that Finn Sweeney, the actor who plays Jimmy Jr., he's great in this episode.
Yes, he absolutely is.
It's the first time we really get to highlight him, right? He's had just a couple of lines in the first two episodes. We didn't actually ever see a lot of him.
No, he was like in very much in the background in the first couple episodes.
Yeah. So this episode really kind of focuses around him, as well as giving also a little bit more attention to his sister character of Grace. And I think it was great that we got to have an episode focus a little bit more on the kids, right? Because this is all about the kids.
Yeah, this is definitely
the whole point of this series is we're doing this for the kids, right? So we need to spend some time with the kids and get to know them and not make it just be about the parents.
It's definitely a comic showcase for Finn Sweeney. I think he's excellent in this episode.
I think he did a great job, and I think that Abigail Spencer did a really great job in this episode as well. Like, she, for the first time, showed us some physical comedy coming from her. And because obviously John Cryer, gives us slapstick physical comedy every time we see him perform, anywhere.
Of course.
But this was the first time I think we got to see really some funny stuff coming from the mom character as well.
Okay, well, I enjoyed this episode. I do have one very big beef.
Oh, a very big one.
Yes, and it's the characterization of Jim in this episode. I really didn't like how they characterize him in this episode. They made him basically an incompetent dad. And okay, so
he always has been portrayed that way.
Okay, true, fair enough. But last week, when I said that he was not a great father, my perceptions were colored by this episode specifically. Because in this episode, he doesn't even buy groceries for the family or anything like that.
He couldn't handle 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly,
parenthood.
exactly. And all right. So here's my thing. It is a stereotype that the man, the father, is generally incompetent, and that's a stereotype that you see pervasive in all of our media. So why does that matter? Why does this bother me so much? Well, because it seeps into how we view things in reality. These things matter because, like it or not, our media, basically, our media makes us view is how we view reality, essentially. That's why, a couple years ago, when during This Is Us, I'm sure you remember that I objected to Kate going to see her abuser. And the reason I did that is because I thought that was a very bad idea. I thought that was a very bad message to send to people who are abuse victims, that this was a good idea. It's not. It very much is not, because our media shapes how we view reality.
Right.
And I think so in a lot of cases, this seeps into how we handle custody cases. The perception is that the dads are the incompetent ones, and in a lot of cases they are. But there's also cases where the mother are very much incompetent as well.
Well, I would argue that in this show, we're really told time and time again that they're both pretty incompetent.
I mean, yes, they are both pretty terrible in this episode, but it specifically bothers me with Jim. If I were in this situation, I would at very least buy some food. Come on. Yeah,
he didn't have opportunity to go grocery shopping.
And I had very little sympathy for him throughout the episode.
You know what I'm just realizing? Have we not touched upon what does Jim do for a living?
I don't know.
We haven't seen him work or do anything.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just watches Swedish horror shows.
Maybe he doesn't. But
or murder mysteries.
We don't know what else is going on in Jim's life besides this family situation. We obviously know Julia's very busy, which is the reason Jim spends 2 weeks with the kids in this episode. But, you know, the whole point was once Julia came back, she couldn't go a day without having to call Jim for help.
Right.
So she's just as incompetent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And she has full-time help now.
Yeah, the thing is that, like, women are... It's not as much of a pervasive stereotype that women are incompetent parents as well. So it's not... That doesn't bother me quite as much. Actually, in Canada, it's actually the other way around, where the men are favored in custody cases or in such cases, which I learned from Carla, my Canadian actress girlfriend. Not really, but yeah, that's the running joke if you've been listening to this channel. But yeah, in Canada, it's very much different. But yeah, like here, it affects the attitude towards men, affects custody cases. And yeah, I think that's... So I would like to see a little less incompetent fathers in our media, is what I'm saying.
I get it. I get what you're saying. But for the sake of the comedy,
yes.
Both parents kind of aren't.
They both suck in this episode. That's for sure.
I feel like we're kind of given the perspective that Trey is the voice of reason that comes in and is like, "Listen, I don't have kids, but I'm going to do better than you guys." But then by the end of this episode, we get that he kind of sucks too.
So exactly. Who do you think is the executive producer with the most power in this series? Because I think it's the Boston Celtics owner, because he comes off the best of these three.
Of these three, yeah. Well, I mean, so it was his idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. We brought this up last week, but we were kind of like, we don't know what we're talking about. So got a little bit more grounded. So I'm going to try my best to say his name, Wyc Grousbeck.
Did you look that up by chance?
No.
Okay, so that's total guess?
Total guess.
Okay.
I did listen to a little bit of an interview that him and his wife did, but I didn't internalize anybody saying his name. But he is the majority owner of the Boston Celtics, and he is the real life character that the character of Trey Taylor is sort of based on, right? Obviously, owner of the Boston Celtics is part of Trey Taylor's name, we've been told.
Yep.
So what happened, as far as I can gather, based on reading a few different articles about this, is that Wyc was saying, yeah, my life could be a sitcom, right? And he was talking
I read that interview.
He was talking to his buddy, Tom Werner, who is an owner of the Boston Red Sox and also a pretty big name in television as far as producing goes. And together they were like, yeah, let's pitch this as a TV show. And they presented the idea, and eventually we ended up with Extended Family.
Sweet.
So his wife, Wic's real life wife, is Amelia Fazzolari. They've been married since 2017, and this is roughly based on the way she parented with her ex.
Okay.
Her ex being George Geyer. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name either. So they were divorced. They had 2 kids, just like in the show. And they were nesting.
Gotcha.
They were doing the same parenting technique where instead of having the kids go back and forth, they were taking turns living with the kids.
Right.
And Wyc got, involved in this and married the mom. One difference I can see being that in real life, Wyc actually has 2 kids of his own from a prior marriage as well.
Gotcha.
So altogether, they have 4 kids in their life, but they're grown now. So his kids are. I'm not sure about Amelia's kids, like the actual kids that the nesting took place with. They can't be as old, right? Because they were only married in 2017. So I'm not sure exactly. I didn't actually find any information on the real life kids to compare here. I'm not even sure if it was a boy and a girl like we get here.
But it's funny because I guess your husband was saying today that his attitude towards the first episode of the series is because this was a ludicrous concept that could possibly happen.
I said last week that my husband watched the pilot and wasn't a fan. He was like, no, I don't like this. But when I told him this story about how, this is, loosely based on the actual life of the actual owner of the Boston Celtics, he suddenly was like, oh, that's cool. He was like, why didn't they highlight that?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So just knowing it was based on real events turned it around for him. And I don't know if he listened to us, which I don't think he ever does.
No.
He know that we'd already talked about this, how, bird nesting is a real thing. Like, people do this.
Right.
And not just this family. Like, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've said before, we don't know how common it is in reality, but it's definitely something that's out there. And for the last, several years, people have been doing this. And it must work for some people because it's still out there.
Yeah.
It's a valid co-parenting technique.
Yep.
That, people who can afford to do this.
Which, you can't imagine is the average person, that's for sure. Not these days.
Yeah.
Because in order to do this, you would have to, you have the nest where the kids stay. And then, for the most part, you'd be living in two separate homes. The mom lives in another place and the father lives in another. And yeah, that would get expensive if you have to maintain 3 different residences.
You and I were talking off air about this, where you could do it with 2,
right? Which
either way, once the 2 parents divorce, they have 2 residences,
right? Oh yeah, of course.
So they could still maintain this with 2 residents, where the parents are taking turns swapping between the 2 houses.
Yeah.
The one house being where they stay by themselves as the single parent when they're not with the kids,
right?
And the other one being the kids' house,
right?
But yeah, either way, it sounds like it takes a lot.
Yeah.
Both monetarily and brain power, I'm going to say, to just make this work.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not sure that either one of these 2 have demonstrated that they have this kind of brain power. Especially not Jim.
They don't feel like they've figured it out yet, how to be single parents.
Right.
They're depending on each other a lot more heavily than they should.
Right.
Like, instead of them being like, yeah, I'm going to take care of them a week and you're going to take care of them a week, they're kind of constantly needing each other, like, repeatedly.
Right.
To the point where I feel like Trey should be a little annoyed by this dynamic.
I'm sure he is. I mean, I would think that he would be, honestly. Okay, so do we have anything else to say before getting into this episode?
I was just talking about those people we mentioned, Wick and Amelia and George and Tom Warner. All 4 of them serve as executive producers on the series.
Gotcha.
And I did read that they all are involved in different capacities. They were involved with casting. They had some say in that. George, that's the father, he actually sits in on the writer's room.
Really?
And as, like a consultant.
Oh, okay.
To, how did this work and how's that work? So they're definitely getting some input from their real lives into the show. Now, how much, we're not going to know. I did see something that suggested that the goldfish incident was something real that happened to them. It wasn't just a TV trope.
Did he end up swallowing the goldfish too?
I mean, probably not.
Right.
But yeah, as of right now, it looks like that's where it stands, is there's some truth to this.
Okay.
It'd be great if we could find out some more.
Right,
and
yeah.
If we can,
that'd be a fascinating,
we'll bring it.
Fascinating story. All right, so diving into this thing, the episode begins with Jim in the kitchen with his father cooking dinner. He made a very small chicken. I'm not sure who this is supposed to feed. Like, I think it would be enough to feed me, and that'd be about it. But Jim ends up dropping it on the ground. His father declares the 5-second rule. Really what it is a mulligan, and gets it back on the table before anyone notices.
He tries picking it up with his hands, which of course immediately burns himself. And this is again where, John Cryer is really showing us the physical comedy that he's really great at.
Julia and Trey arrive, and his father declares that Jim made supper.
Yeah.
And then we have our credits.
And it was this like great little not a montage, but just this quick scene where like we have the chicken getting back on the plate, the rag that's cleaning up the floor. Jim throws the rag to Grandpa Bobby, who tosses it in the trash because, of course, you have to throw the rag away. I mean,
right. Right.
A rag on the table would be suspicious.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just as Julia and Trey enter, and what's great about this is we do get to repeat this scene again later
at the very end. Yeah. After the credits, we learned that they were on Trey and Julia were on vacation in Miami.
Well, they weren't on vacation. She was working.
Well, it was a work vacation.
She was working on location.
Right.
In Miami.
Jim ended up taking an extra week at the nest because of the fact that they ended up staying an extra week, and he's very, very whiny about it. He's basically like, I'm done. I'm just completely fried. I don't have any brain power left. after just 2 weeks, by the way.
Right.
There's a lot of parents that don't get a break at all.
Yeah.
So my sympathy for Jim here is 0.
Right.
But we learned that Jim hasn't bought any food, that his daughter failed a math test and he didn't investigate, and that their son is nonstop playing a video game because and he won't come to dinner, basically, when he's called. He wants to go home to watch his Swedish murder show back at the apartment, and Trey seems to know something about this.
Yeah, they bond over this Swedish show throughout this episode.
Trey offers them dinner. Both his dad and Jim decline for the obvious reasons.
I wonder why they didn't want to stay for dinner. We also learned during this that the reason she was in Miami is because Pitbull is one of her clients.
Oh, okay.
She couldn't tell us that because she had an NDA, but Trey was eager to share that bit of news that it was Pitbull that they were with, and he was very excited about that.
So Julia goes to Jimmy's room, who's playing what appears to be a very violent video game, as he's repeatedly shouting about stabbing people. And I love this whole sequence. He knows his mother. He hugs her and is quick to sell Grace down the river about her bad grade.
Right. Because Grace is sleeping over Jasmine's house tonight. And so we haven't seen her yet. Mm-hmm. It was just part of the whole, well, where are my kids? Like, I'm home.
Right.
Why don't you have my kids ready to see me?
So at dinner, Jimmy tells his mother and Trey about the game, which apparently is called Stab the Neighbors, which is totally not violent because there are no guns in this game.
There's no guns.
Just knives and machetes.
Knives and machetes, and the neighbors are designed to look like and are named after their real neighbors.
Yes, I think there's some reason for concern here.
Yeah, and I think this is supposed to mirror. There is a game, right? Mm. But it's about breaking into your neighbor's house. Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called, but
I want to say it's just called Neighbors.
Yeah, something like that.
Neighbor.
Yeah.
And the goal is to just break into their house. Yes. So I feel like this is commentary on that.
Right. Okay, so now I'll get to this in a little bit. I have something to say about that, but. All right, so Julia says that it is important to go outside, which he says he does. He walks home from school. And I think he walks to school too, I guess. I
would imagine that's how it works.
Okay. And it's important to play with your friends. Well, he does. He plays with his friends on this video game.
I mean, that's the world we live in.
Yes.
That's true. That is how people interact with their friends.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad, but that's the way it goes. There's no more, going outside and, discovering new things and getting into trouble, which I suppose that part's good. But anyway, Jimmy also got an after-school job bringing Mr. Shea his mail. Yeah. And this will actually be important.
Right. So it wasn't all bad news. She also learned that he started this job while she was away. So she's happy to hear that Jimmy's taking some responsibility. I mean, he's, 10?
Something like that. He's pretty young.
Yeah. So this is a pretty big deal that he's doing something to earn his own money.
I think that's more than my 10-year-old does.
Yeah.
Actually, my 11-year-old at this point. Julia asks about the game. And he killed a bunch of the neighbors named after... Oh, we talked about that already. So he goes back to the game, but not before suggesting a 2-week grounding is a fair punishment for Grace. Okay, so Julia ends up calling Jim about the situation, who looks at the phone, looks really extremely annoyed, talks for 2 seconds, and ends up hanging up.
Yeah, he said he's not interested unless it's an emergency. Right. He did his time. You figure it out.
Right.
Which, that's true.
Somewhat.
He just left.
Right.
So, handle it.
Yeah. I mean, this might be...
if we need to talk about it, we can talk about it, but it's not an emergency that you got to call me at home right now.
Right. It's not like he's going to imminently actually go out and kill the neighbors. I mean, not as far as we know. Julia... Okay, so she asks Trey if Jimmy is in fact a good kid, and asks if he's going to turn into a sociopath. Trey says that not everyone who plays video games turns into a psychopath, but some do, and this is enough to get Julia to go once again to intervene in this situation. Yeah. Okay, so, all right. Back in college, I wrote a paper.
Okay.
Violence in the media. Now, my opinion actually was that, no, I don't think violence in the media actually causes people to go out and kill people. I don't believe that if you take a normal, rational person and they watch a bunch of violent, TV or play video games, that they're going to go out and kill people.
Right.
If you do something like that, which does happen, there's already something wrong with you. And if it's not this, it's going to be something else.
Right.
That was my actual opinion. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any sources to back up my opinion. So what I ended up doing was reversing my opinion for the paper and writing the exact opposite argument that I actually wanted to make. So that's just a little...
So you're not a very good debater, is what you...
No, I mean, like, they wanted 3 sources, and I couldn't find them, basically. So I ended up just having to reverse my opinion, at least for the paper. I don't actually believe that, though.
Okay.
I don't believe, that, based on what we've seen in the kid so far, that he is, like, a sociopath.
Right.
I don't think he's going to go out and kill people.
However, I agree with you that the existence of violence in media shouldn't go away. Right. We shouldn't pretend that violence doesn't exist for the sake of not exposing kids to violence. Mm-hmm. But if you do have excessive violence...
Well, yeah, that's the other part of my
argument. Like we're obviously having here, there should be age limits on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This kid's probably younger than the age limit of this game. Mm-hmm. The fact that he is talking to other people while playing it makes me kind of question who he might be interacting with that's also so interested in this game.
Right.
And, I do think that
excessive, like, playing the game constantly is a problem.
Of course. But what I was more getting at is, to the media itself is I can see that, people who do have those sociopathic tendencies, how they might be influenced by something that's excessive being normalized.
Right.
And how it might just kind of numb people to the violence a little bit.
Yeah.
So I do think there should be limits. Like, things shouldn't be excessively violent just for the sake of being excessively violent. But I do think there's place for them. I mean, I love horror movies.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, we shouldn't have horror movies because it's going to turn people into killers. That's ridiculous. But, there should be limits, especially with young children. You should be monitoring what your kids are doing, and you should be limiting how much time they spend on gaming in general. And, of course, you need a parent.
Right. Well, I mean, that is totally 100% up to Julia to handle and deal with. It is also up to Jim to handle and deal with.
Right. So who bought this game for him in the first place?
It could have been like one of those things where you like downloaded it.
He just did it himself?
Yeah.
That's his own thing, too. How does he have access to do that? He shouldn't have a means to pay for a game without someone knowing what he's buying.
Maybe it was a free version or something. I don't know. So, yeah. She hears shouting of her son telling the neighbors to die. She decides to, instead of talking to, her son and tell him, hey, look, enough is enough.
Right. She never actually dealt with the situation.
Right.
She never actually said, I think this is a little too violent.
Right.
She never actually had a conversation. So you don't actually think we should kill our neighbors, right?
Right. So instead of having this conversation, she just decides, I'm going to destroy the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know anything about what anything does here, so she's just unplugging everything.
And this is where I was talking about this. She gave us some great physical comedy. She went into the closet where they have their modem and router and all of this stuff and literally just started, like, ripping it to pieces.
So eventually, she gets a reaction. He comes crying out of the room. She says, she runs down the hall to pretend like she had nothing to do with it. She goes back like she's reacting to his screaming. And, she's like, I don't know anything about this. But your dad does. Oh, well, we have to call him right now. Well, it's late. We can't do that. We'll have to wait till tomorrow. So, yeah, that was kind of amusing. But anyway, Trey doesn't think this was the way to go. Yeah, no kidding.
That sounds familiar, though. That seems to be Trey's overall opinion on everything Jim and Julia ever do when parenting.
I'm afraid he's just constantly the voice of reason. He says if he doesn't want him to, or she doesn't want him to play the game, she's the mother. She can tell him not to. That, like, imposing limits on your kids. That's what you're supposed to do. That is your job.
Right.
She doesn't want to because Jim let everything go to hell in 2 weeks, I add. In 2 weeks, this all went to hell. Like, I don't know. It's kind of crazy that it just, like, fell apart that quickly. Trey points out it happened because she extended her trip. And then we learn that, the second week was not part of the work trip, that they, in fact, went and had some fun. Okay. That's fine. You can do that, but, it'd be nice if you were honest about it. Another way that Julia's not so great here.
Okay, I didn't pick up any of that.
Well, they mentioned Trey went down the water slide.
Well, we'd learned earlier that this whole thing took place on Pitbull's yacht.
Oh, okay.
That had a water slide.
it seemed like they were suggesting with that Trey and Julia extended the trip not for work-related reasons, but because they wanted to actually be on vacation.
Well,
so they went...
That's not how I took it. I took it as, they had a lot of fun, but they still were working because they were with Pitbull the whole time.
Maybe they were during the first week, but I'm not so sure about the second week.
So you think they could have cut it short to come back and be parents?
Yes, I think they could have.
Okay.
Or at least have been honest about it. Hey, we're going to be, just screwing around for a week. Is that cool? Anyway. So Julia wants the cable company to take the hit, not herself. She doesn't want to be the bad guy. Grace comes in.
Yeah, we finally see Grace.
Yeah, and Julia wants to know about her bad grades.
Grace comes in just to tell us she's leaving again to go to Jasmine's house again.
That seems like a typical teenager thing to do to me.
And by the way, I love that smiley face sweater that Grace is wearing in this scene.
Apparently, she did bad because her answers were, I don't care.
Uh-huh.
And that would probably be, I think that would be my answers on a trig test. I wouldn't even be in trigonometry in the first place.
I mean, you don't have a choice as a kid.
You don't?
You got to take math. And if that's where she placed in math.
I never had to take trigonometry. I only had to do algebra.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Things have definitely changed.
You got to take whatever math they tell you to take, right?
She says that trig is not useful in life. It's not. I've never used trigonometry. I mean, I don't know in the first place. Never took a class. The very word scares the crap out of me. But anyway. And, it's funny. Julia also doesn't like math. My daughter, Julia. Not the character Julia in this show.
I got a feeling she don't like math either, though.
I'm sure she doesn't.
Yeah.
So Jim comes in. I don't even know why he's here.
He came to fix the internet.
Okay, so
she kept her word to her son, and she called his dad in the morning and said, can you come fix the internet? I want to know why Mr. MIT here couldn't fix it.
Right.
Trey.
Right.
Who's wearing his MIT hoodie again, has to constantly boast that he went to MIT. Although that is different from Wick.
Yeah.
His real life counterpart. Wick didn't go to MIT. He went to Princeton.
Oh, okay. Fancy dancy. So basically, Jim decides, I guess they make a mutual decision not to fix the internet because he just goes home.
He says he couldn't fix it.
He couldn't?
That's what he says.
I mean, she made a pretty big, mess of it, so I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't know where all the wires go.
Yeah. But did we really need to call him? Again, isn't Trey smarter than him when it comes to stuff like that, I would assume?
Yeah, you would think so. And I have in my notes, why did he come at all? He was here for like 2 seconds. Like, he could have said, I'm not doing this at home, basically.
Which is his point, is that he constantly keeps getting called back when it's not his week.
Right.
Like 3 times during the episode he had to come back. So I get it.
Trey and Julia realize he's still playing the game, and she goes upstairs because he rigged up the internet to Mr. Shea's setup. Basically, he's going to take $2 instead of $5 in exchange for using his sweet Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so he's basically using the money from this new little after-school job to pay for internet from his neighbor.
Jimmy says he's going to go pro at the stabbing game. And so this ends up resulting in Julia calling an emergency meeting with Jim, who's pissed off because he's wondering who died. Nobody. And, of course, they also call in Jimmy's dad, whose name I'm somewhat...
Grandpa Bobby.
Grandpa Bobby back into the situation to talk about the Jimmy situation, as well as Grace's lack of interest in trigonometry. Grandpa pipes in to say, no one with his genes will ever be good at math, and boys will always pretend to kill each other.
Right. And I think Grandpa Bobby's really the real voice of reason in this series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he seems to be the one that actually has the answers.
I mean, I don't know that his whole lying to the kids about the dead goldfish thing was the way to go. But here he definitely has a better point. And in the last episode, he was also the voice of reason there, too. Right. Trey steps up and tells Jim that he left him with a train wreck, but Julia's, her answers to the problem were all really bad.
Yeah, he
made some really
straight
bad
up
choices.
says that they're both failing as parents.
Yep, and he's definitely right.
And he says they need to inspire the kids, and he has a plan.
So this idea is to take him to Professor Davenport, I believe the name was.
Yep, they go to visit Professor Davenport at MIT. To inspire them.
Yes.
And it seems great on the surface. He's like, yeah, Jimmy's really interested in computers. Like, that could be a positive thing.
Yep. And the professor says he doesn't even remember having Trey as a student, but he gets to know the two of them, and then he starts talking about global warming and how they're all screwed. And the only people that can fix it are Grace and Jimmy's generation. So basically, we made the mess, and you're going to have to clean it up.
Yeah, so basically what happened is this conversation went in a very different direction than what Trey intended, and he scared the crap out of these kids. He tells them that there's a melting glacier, and it's going to lead to an extinction-level event. And yeah, it's like, I'm entrusting you to fix this problem. And he means your generation, but they take it personal. They're like, us?
Right.
Us too? We have to save the world?
Yes. So they take this to the heart. They go back to their parents and start laying down the new rules. And basically it's, you can't even have lights on. There's
no lights, no heat, no meat.
Right.
They have to compost everything. No fabrics made out of any animal byproducts. No pencils because they're made out of wood, and no pens because they're made out of plastic.
Right.
They're just like, stop doing things.
But
stop.
But Grace is, she's inspired to go back to her trigonometry class because she wants to take an environmental class which uses trigonometry.
Right. She said she has to do good in trig in order to get into the environmental engineering class online that she wants to take.
I'm not sure what Jimmy's going to do, but he's intent on basically just leaving the parents in the dark.
If he doesn't want to use any electricity, he's not going to go play the game.
Well, so we solved the problem.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is never eat meat, don't use heat, don't have lights on, and you're all good.
So they're sitting in the dark. Jim leaves to go back to his apartment where he can use heat and light and finish watching his show.
And eat some meat, presumably.
Eat some meat. He said something about a bacon cheeseburger, I think.
I want a bacon cheeseburger now. All right. And so during the credits, which I assume this is where the credits are going to be.
Yeah, assumably, because we haven't seen the credits in our screener that we got. But
right. Trey and Julia are making dinner.
And
it's
candlelight.
Yep.
They're bundled up in like these thickest winter coats, cooking by candlelight. And she drops the lasagna on the floor. And we're mirror that opening scene perfectly with the chicken. Now I'm going to say, dropping that lasagna on the floor and picking it up.
That's not recoverable.
It looks a lot worse than the chicken.
Yeah.
There's no 5-second rule that's going to save this lasagna.
Right.
She's plopping it all back in the pan. And we do the same thing. We get the rag. She throws it to Trey, and he dumps it in the trash can just as Jim and Bobby come in.
And, that is where the episode ends. So, pretty decent, half-hour television, despite my little beef.
There was definitely some laughs in this one.
Yeah.
Also, at the same time, I feel like it tackled a little bit of a heavier topic than we saw in the first 2 episodes.
That I definitely appreciate that.
We touched on a real topic.
Right.
A real topic in parenting. Not everybody's going to have to deal with what do you do when a goldfish dies. I mean, I guess that comes up a lot, too. But it was more of just, a comedic thing where this was like, okay, this is something parents actually have to deal with is, are your kids too obsessed with their screens?
And I appreciate the episode for bringing it up so that we can talk about it. Because that's what I live for, is to have those conversations.
And again, this is, they didn't handle it great.
No.
But it brings up these topics. So if a family's watching this show, because it's a family show, this could be a segue to talking to your kids about their overuse of electronics, or about the type of games they're playing, or about the importance of doing good in school. Like, this could definitely be a segue to opening lines of communication.
Learn trigonometry, or we're all going to die in the global disaster that's coming. Yeah, okay. Do we have anything else to say about this episode?
Well, normally this is where I would talk about the next episode, but we haven't actually seen episode 4 yet. We haven't received that screener as of the time we are recording this. So I'm not sure what's coming next, but
It'll be something zany and funny, hopefully.
It'll be the consequences of something, I'm assuming.
Maybe it's a sushi episode.
That's coming eventually.
Yeah, maybe that's going to be the series finale where they just all die because they ate bad sushi or something. Anyway.
So this was episode 3 out of 13, so we've got 10 left. I did not catch the ratings for episode 2.
Critical reception seemed a little better than
episode 1. Remember, episode 1 had like ridiculously high ratings?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where episode 2 fell as far as the ratings go. But this is, I don't know. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see. And if anybody's listening to us at the end of episode 3 discussion, I'm assuming you like the series.
Yep.
So if you like it, keep coming back. Give them some ratings. Give us some comments. Let us know how you feel about the show.
If you comment, we will definitely shout you out. I mean, as long as your comment is not ridiculously negative, I will air your opinion. If you have
something worth repeating, we will shout you out.
Yes. Yeah. So that's that.
That's that.
All right. We would like to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership, which is a new way to support us in our because we just got screeners. Well, not screeners. We just got monetized. So if you want to support us, you can do it that way. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off.